Some families welcome you with open arms. The Blackwells were not that kind of family. From the moment James introduced me as his fiancée, his mother Vivian had regarded me with the cool assessment of someone inspecting damaged goods. His sister Audrey barely concealed her disdain behind tight smiles, while his father Richard simply looked through me as if I were made of glass. Emma works at the Children's Hospital, James had explained proudly during that first uncomfortable dinner at their Beacon Hill mansion. As a doctor? Vivian had asked, perfectly tweezed eyebrows raised hopefully. As an art therapist, I'd answered, I help children process trauma through creative expression. How? Nice, Vivian had replied in a tone that suggested it was anything but. I suppose not everyone can handle medical school. That set the tone for our relationship. In their eyes, I was unworthy of their son, the brilliant neurosurgeon from the distinguished Blackwell family, whose ancestors had practically built Boston. I was just a girl from somewhere in the Midwest, Minnesota, actually with a master's degree in a hobby field, their words, and no impressive family connections. What the Blackwells didn't know, what I hadn't told James yet, was that I had deliberately downplayed my background. After growing up in the suffocating world of old money and social expectations, I'd wanted to make my own way, to be loved for myself rather than my family name or bank account. When I met James during a hospital fundraiser, I'd been drawn to his compassion and dedication to his patients, not realizing he was a Blackwell until our third date. By then, I was already falling in love with the man, not the pedigree. And I wanted him to love the real me, Emma Larson, art therapist, not Emma Larson Miller, heiress to the Miller publishing fortune and granddaughter of Eleanor Miller, the famously private fashion designer behind the exclusive Valentina Culture label. So I kept quiet about my background, enduring the Blackwells' condescension with as much grace as I could muster. James defended me when he could, but he was often caught between loyalty to me and a lifetime of deference to his formidable family. They'll come around, he promised, kissing my forehead. Once they see how happy you make me, they'll have to. But 6 months into our engagement, with the wedding just 8 weeks away, the Blackwells had shown no signs of warming to me. If anything, their thinly veiled disapproval had intensified as wedding plans progressed. Which brought us to today, the final fitting for my wedding dress, an appointment that should have been special and intimate. Instead, Vivian had insisted on accompanying me, bringing Audrey and her mother's friend Diane Cartwright, the self-appointed arbiter of Boston society fashion, for expert opinions. I just want to make sure everything is appropriate, Vivian had said. Translation. She didn't trust me not to embarrass the family. I had agreed, knowing what they didn't. The dress I'd chosen was a Valentina original, designed by my grandmother specifically for me. Not that they would recognize it immediately. Valentina Couture created fewer than 20 dresses per year, each one unique, each one coveted by royalty and A-list celebrities worldwide. My grandmother operated in complete privacy, her identity known to only a handful of people in the fashion world. The bridal salon, Les Cils Bridal, was the only boutique in Boston authorized to handle Valentina fittings. The owner, Marguerite, was one of the few who knew both my grandmother's identity and my connection to her. She had promised complete discretion for today's appointment. Emma, darling. Marguerite greeted me with the traditional European double kiss when we arrived. As she noticed Vivian's slight frown at our familiarity, she gave no indication. We have everything prepared in the private salon. She led us through the main showroom, past racks of designer gowns that made Audrey and Diane murmur appreciatively, and into an elegant fitting room with champagne already poured and waiting. Now, Marguerite said, addressing me while pointedly ignoring my entourage, your final alterations are complete. Are you ready to see? I nodded, trying to calm the butterflies in my stomach. Despite knowing I had chosen a masterpiece, the weight of the Blackwell's judgment made me uncharacteristically nervous. Marguerite disappeared into an adjoining room and returned carrying my dress with the reverence of someone handling a priceless artifact, which in the fashion world it essentially was. The dress was deceptively simple at first glance. An ivory silk column with a subtle A-line silhouette, minimal beading, and delicate cap sleeves. What made it extraordinary were the nearly invisible details, hand-embroidered vines that spiraled across the bodice, thousands of tiny seed pearls creating texture that caught the light with every movement, and the impeccable construction that made it look effortless. But the Blackwell women saw none of this. Oh, Vivian said flatly. It's very plain. Audrey circled the dress with narrowed eyes. Where did you find this again? It looks like something off the rack at one of those budget bridal stores. Diane Cartwright adjusted her designer glasses. No structure, no presence, certainly not what I'd expect for a Blackwell wedding. I bit my tongue as Marguerite helped me into the dress behind a dressing screen. When I emerged, even I was stunned by the transformation. The dress, beautiful on a hanger, became transcendent when worn. It moved like water, catching light from angles that seemed impossible, the subtle details suddenly harmonizing into something magical. But the magic was lost on my audience. What a shame you couldn't afford something better, my future sister-in-law sneered, eyeing my wedding dress with undisguised contempt. Everyone will know you married James for his money. Vivian sighed dramatically. We could have helped, you know. The Blackwell name opens doors. I'm sure Carolina Herrera would have made time in her schedule if he just asked us instead of settling. Marguerite, who had been making minuscule adjustments to the hem, slowly straightened, her professional composure cracking. Excuse me, but this dress is. It's fine, Marguerite, I interrupted softly. I had promised myself I wouldn't reveal my background out of spite, but I was beginning to reconsider. Diane Cartwright had approached to examine the fabric more closely. At least the material isn't polyester. Small mercies. She reached for the collar, where the dressmaker's label was discreetly sewn. Let's see who actually made this understated little number. The bridal shop owner gasped when she flipped the dress label, her eyes widening in alarm. This is a one-of-a-kind Valentina Coucher. The room fell silent. Even in Boston's rarefied social circles, a Valentina original was mythical, the fashion equivalent of spotting a unicorn. Diane's hand jerked away from the label as if burned. That's impossible, she whispered. Valentina creates fewer than 20 pieces annually. Her waiting list is years long. Even I couldn't secure one for my daughter's wedding. Vivian had gone pale. There must be some mistake. How could you possibly? Now my mother-in-law was frantically backpedaling, her social instincts kicking in as she reassessed everything she thought she knew about me. I had no idea you came from that kind of family. That's when I decided to tell them exactly who I really was. My full name, I said quietly, meeting Vivian's stunned gaze in the mirror, is Emma Larson Miller. My grandmother is Eleanor Miller. The revelation landed like a bomb. Diane Cartwright actually gasped, clutching her pearl necklace. Eleanor Miller, she repeated. The Eleanor Miller? Publishing magnate Stephen Miller's wife? I nodded. And the woman behind Valentina Coucher, though that's not public knowledge. Audrey had collapsed onto a velvet settee, her face a study in horrified realization. But your job, the art therapy, is my passion, I finished for her. I could have joined the family business or lived off my trust fund, but I chose to build my own life. Just like I chose James for his kindness and brilliance, not his last name. Vivian was struggling to process this information, social calculations visibly racing behind her eyes. The Blackwells were wealthy and respected in Boston society, but the Miller publishing empire operated on a different level entirely, international, intensely private, and worth billions. Why didn't you tell us? She finally managed. Would it have mattered? I asked. Would you have treated me differently if you'd known my family had more money than yours? Because that would be rather revealing, wouldn't it? Marguerite, bless her, chose that moment to bring over the veil, another Valentina creation of handmade Belgian lace so fine it seemed to float. Your grandmother sent this over this morning, she said, carefully arranging it on my head. A gift to complete the ensemble. The addition of the veil transformed the look entirely. Standing there in Valentina Coucher, I no longer felt like the outsider trying to measure up to Blackwell standards. I was simply a bride preparing to marry the man I loved. I think, I said, smoothing the perfect silk, that we're finished with the fitting. Thank you, Marguerite. The ride back to my apartment was silent, the Blackwell women processing their new reality. As we pulled up to my building, a modest brownstone I'd chosen for its proximity to the hospital rather than its address, Vivian finally spoke. Will you tell James about your family? Tonight? I confirmed. I've already invited him over for dinner. I should have told him sooner, but I wanted to be sure he loved me for myself. Something shifted in Vivian's expression. perhaps the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her. I understand that impulse better than you might think. After a pause, she added, "The dress is exquisite, by the way. Truly worthy of a Blackwell bride." It wasn't exactly an apology, but from Vivian Blackwell, it was a start. That evening, I prepared a simple dinner in my apartment, nervous about James's reaction. Would he be hurt that I kept this secret? Would it change how he saw me? When I opened the door to him, his smile, the one that still made my heart skip, reassured me instantly. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing me hello. "How was the fitting? Did my mother behave?" "About that," I began, leading him to the couch. "There's something I need to tell you." I explained everything, my family, my grandmother's secret identity, my decision to make my own way. As I spoke, I watched his expression carefully, looking for signs of anger or betrayal. Instead, when I finished, he laughed. "Emma Miller? The Emma Miller. I had the biggest crush on you in college." "What?" Now it was my turn to be shocked. "Harvard Medical, your junior year at Boston University," he explained. "You spoke at a symposium on creative therapies and pediatric care. I was in the audience. You were brilliant and gorgeous, and when they introduced you as Emma Miller, heir to the publishing fortune, I thought, she's so far out of my league." "You knew?" I whispered. He shrugged. "I knew who Emma Miller was. But when I met Emma Larson years later, I didn't make the connection. You were just the compassionate art therapist who challenged me to see my patients as whole people, not just neurological puzzles." Tears pricked my eyes. "And you didn't care about any of it. The name, the money." "I fell in love with you," he said simply. "Though I have to admit, I'm relieved my mother found out before the wedding. Now she can stop treating you like you're after my non-existent fortune." I laughed through my tears. "She's already adjusting. You should have seen her face when she realized my grandmother is Valentina." James pulled me close. "I'm marrying you for your terrible taste in movies, your inability to cook anything more complex than pasta, and the way you see beauty in broken things. The dress is just a bonus." 2 days later, a handwritten note arrived from Vivian Blackwell, requesting my presence at tea. When I arrived at the Beacon Hill mansion, I found not just Vivian but Audrey waiting in the solarium, both impeccably dressed and visibly nervous. "Emma," Vivian began after the initial pleasantries, "I owe you an apology. My behavior has been inexcusable." Audrey nodded vigorously. "Mine too. We were horrible to you." "We were protecting James," Vivian continued, "or so we told ourselves. But in truth, we were protecting our own narrow view of what his life should be." I accepted their apology with grace, recognizing the genuine remorse beneath the carefully composed exteriors. As we sipped tea, the conversation gradually became more natural, evolving from stilted politeness to something approaching warmth. "There is one thing," Vivian said hesitantly as I prepared to leave. "The Blackwells host an annual charity gala for Boston Children's Hospital. Given your work there and your family's philanthropic history, would you consider taking a more active role in organizing it this year?" It was an olive branch and an acknowledgement of my professional value separate from my family name. "I'd be honored," I replied sincerely. The week before the wedding, a special delivery arrived at my apartment, a handcrafted wooden box containing a diamond and pearl tiara, accompanied by a note in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "Dearest Emma, this has adorned the brides in our family for 4 generations. Wear it not as an heiress, but as a woman who knows her true worth comes from within. With love and pride, Grandmother." On my wedding day, as I prepared to walk down the aisle wearing my Valentina gown and family tiara, my father asked if I regretted keeping my background secret for so long. Not for a moment, I told him. It gave me the chance to find people who value me for who I am, not what I have. "And did you," he asked, "find those people?" I looked toward the altar where James waited, his eyes shining with love as he saw me. Beyond him sat our guests, colleagues from the hospital who had become dear friends, his family now genuinely welcoming, and even Diane Cartwright looking suitably impressed. "I did," I confirmed. "And for those who couldn't see my worth without a designer label, they're learning that true value isn't about pedigree or price tags. It's about character, compassion, and creating beauty where you find yourself." As I began my walk down the aisle, I caught Vivian Blackwell's eye. She nodded once, a gesture of respect rather than mere social approval. In that moment, I understood that sometimes the most valuable things we can offer each other aren't measured in dollars or designer labels. They're measured in second chances, in the courage to see beyond surfaces, and in the wisdom to recognize that true worth never needs to announce itself.